I am one of those individuals who, unfortunately, do not have much artistic talent. The good thing is that I do have many of my children that do have artistic talent. And I have often thought about how important are artists to our society. When we think about the farm workers, we say, yes, farm workers are essential workers because they're out there every single day in the heat and in the cold, preparing the food that is going to be served at our tables every single day. Even in spite of the pandemic or whatever, they have got to be out there. So, thank you. You have to give yourself an applause for remembering the farm workers. And so farm workers, they actually prepare the food that feeds our bodies. But I have to say that all of you as artists feed our souls. You as artists feed our souls. And often when we think of what is the role of artists in our society, and I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't know because you all know this because this is who you are. You are the ones that keep society, I'm going to use the word, keep our sanity. When we think of all of the crazy things that are going on in the world, but you are the ones that bring the message of hope, bring the message of love, bring them in the work that you do, bring the message of justice. You know, and when I think of the future, and I've often thought about this, when we see that so many jobs are going to be robotized in our society, and then you think, well, what kind of work are people going to do? And we don't know that if people do not have work, something that they can do with their hands, that this is a very big threat to our society. Because people have to do something that is meaningful. If not, and this might sound kind of over-dramatic, people will go crazy. They have to have something that they can do that is fulfilling and that makes them feel like they make valuable contributions to society. And we know that almost every person has some type of gift of art that they can engage in and contribute. At the beginning, I mentioned that I am not artistic in many ways, but the one thing that when I was young, and my goal in life was to be a flamenco dancer. So in school, I was never good in sports because I'm very small, as you can see. But I was always really good at modern dancing, okay? That was the one thing that I could do, so I always felt the one artistic maybe a trend that I would have is that I could dance, and I love to dance. And I tell everybody, especially when I speak to young people, you've got to learn how to dance. Because if you can learn how to dance and you can make your feet strong, then that means that you will be able to march in many, many marches when you're marching for justice, okay? So I know what I am saying right now, that it is something that that all of you have thought about that. Okay, what is society going to do if we could not find that type of art that we can engage in and contribute? But we have seen that art has been ignored in our society. There are many, many schools today that don't have art. When I was young, I was very, by the way, I'll have to tell you my age so you can see why my words are a little fragile. I'm going to be 92 years old in about 20 days. And when I was in elementary school, this is right after the Depression, and they had a big program called the WPA. Maybe some of you may know about this, but in my elementary school in Stockton, California, not too far from here, that we had music lessons. I learned how to play the violin. We had dancing lessons. I learned how to do tap dancing. They had little theater classes so that I got to play the Queen of Spain, La Reina Isabella. And these were all things that were so important. My brother, by the way, could play the violin a lot better than I could. But this, for us as children, that was so important that we could learn all of these different phases of art that gave. And if I can remember what I remember about elementary school, I think this is all that I remember, in my life, and what it meant to me to be a youngster and to be exposed and to have all of those lessons free. Because the teachers were paid to teach us that because they were giving artists work during the Depression. And so when we look at today's world and we see what is happening in our schools, our children being taught art. We know that some schools do because they have the wherewithal. But in many, many of the schools where the children of farm workers go to school, and when you have low-income communities, children do not have that exposure. And so that, of course, it's depriving our society from the contributions of artists, and also to let them know what they can do. And often I meet young people and older people. I know there's one young man who is very, very gifted, played the guitar, an incredible artist, never had an opportunity to show his art or to even be able to live off of his art. And I know that is one of the biggest problems that we have, is that artists can't make a living off of their art. And so therefore, all of society is deprived of the contributions of their art. Now, art, not only in terms of giving pleasure to people when they see it and giving people that emotional experience, but to me, art is healing. Art is healing. Myself, I have to say, when I am really, really tired, but I get a chance to go to hear some live music, I'm not tired any longer after I hear the music. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is put on the radio so I can hear some music. The last thing that I do at night is put on the radio so I can hear some music. Music is very essential. And when you're in the movement, like we were with the farm workers movement, what kept us going? Our strike with the United Farm Workers lasted 5 years, 5 years. And it was very tough to be able to go on strike for 5 years. But what kept us going? Every Friday night, the farm workers who were on strike, by the way, they weren't getting hardly any money at all, just barely food and clothes from donations. But every Friday night, we had, with Luis Valdez, had a theater. We had a teatro, some kind of a little acting piece that they performed. When we were on the picket line, what did we do? From morning till night, we sang songs. We shall overcome, this little light of mine. And all day on the picket line, we would sing, and that kept our spirits up so that we could continue for another week, another month, another year. That is what kept us alive. So I think that our task is, how are we able to make art so mainstream that just as every day we have to have maybe a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a dozen eggs in the refrigerator, that we know that every family has to have some type of art in their lives. How can we expand it? How can we organize it to make sure that art is an everyday part of our life? And of course, the biggest question that we have to answer, and we always know that what's important are the questions, oftentimes. We can never reach our goals unless we ask the questions first. So what can you in society, all of us, do to make sure that the essential workers that we call artists, that somehow that they are respected enough in society that they can live on their art, that they can have a living wage, and to make sure that art is just a part of our everyday life. And that somehow, in the richest country in the world, the United States of America, that we find the resources to make sure that every single artist not only can be respected, but that they can be provided a living wage for their families, okay? So when we started the Farm Workers Union, Cesar Chavez and myself, farm workers were kind of, they were not respected. People didn't even think about farm workers. They were out there in the fields. They didn't have bathrooms, if you can imagine, all of the women out there being many, many miles away from the nearest town, the nearest gas station, and you don't have a bathroom in the fields. Didn't have drinking water. Didn't have rest periods. Completely not only ignored, but disrespected as individual human beings. So how did we change that? And when Cesar and I started the Farm Workers Union, people said, it's impossible. You're not going to be able to organize farm workers because every attempt that had been made to organize farm workers, the farm workers were defeated. Well, the way that we changed that, and we were very lucky because we had met a great human being, a great organizer named Fred Ross Sr. I could ask the question if anybody in the room has ever heard of Fred Ross. I see one hand, two hands. And the reason that you never heard of Fred Ross is because he was such a great organizer, okay? Because his job was to organize people and to empower people. Without Fred Ross Sr., there never would have been a United Farm Workers, because he's the one that taught Cesar and myself and many other people how to organize. And the way that he taught us to organize was very simple. Is that we met with farm workers in their homes in groups of maybe 5 to 7 to 8 people. And we met with them and we talked about the issues that they had, and we talked about how are we going to be able to solve these issues so that farm workers can be respected and being treated like human beings and being given the wages and benefits that they deserve. And we did this type of house by house organizing, family by family, and we actually did that for 3 years. A lot of times when you see the Cesar Chavez movie, it looks like Cesar walked into the field and all the farm workers went on strike. No, it didn't happen like that. It was family by family, family by family. And we finally were able to organize over 1,000 farm workers, and then they were ready to go on strike, but not before that. In my foundation, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we used exactly the same model. There's an issue, we had an issue about education. For young people of color were being expelled from schools, from our current high school district in Bakersfield, California. So how did we approach that? The same way. Family by family, house by house, until we got enough evidence and got enough people organized to challenge the high school district when they had expelled 2,500 kids of color in 1 year. 2,500 in 1 year. We won the lawsuit, and now from 2,500 expulsions, they're down to 21. But it only happened because the families of these students were the ones who got together and organized that. And so, and I'm saying this, and I'm not trying to be paternalistic when I say that. So when we think of how can we make sure that all of you who do this incredible, beautiful artwork, how can we make sure that it becomes such a part of the fabric of our communities that there can be no social event without your presence, without the presence of artists. And not only ceramic artists, but I remember being in New York City during the grape boycott when we were asking people not to buy grapes. And the great thing at that time, this is back in the 60s, especially with the labor movement, every single event that they had live music. Every single event they had live music, okay? And so none of the arts are going to survive unless we, the ones that care about this, and we're doing it not for ourselves, but for our society, that we insist that we have a presence there. That we have a presence in every single event that is happening in our community. Say, hey, we're here. We're here, and we want to be part of your event. And we want to take our artwork for people to see it. And yes, artists, you can't help what you do because that's who you are. But don't think of just doing this for yourself, but think of doing it for the community, because the community and society, they need to see your work, because oftentimes they themselves do not realize how important it is for them to have that. But it's going to take, I guess, a lot of work to make this happen, like with us with the forming the Farm Workers Union. But if we can somehow in every single community say that we as artists are here and we demand to be part of whatever you do out there so that we can promote the work that we do. And then, of course, we really have to fight very hard to make sure that we get the money and the resources that we need. And, electing the people to office that are going to recognize what we do. And again, with keeping that in mind, then often that you're not doing it for yourselves, but that you are doing it for the community. And God knows if there was any time in the world that we needed healing, it is now. It is now. So, we're in such a critical time now in our society, but at the same time, we might say, a reckoning where people are demanding things. We as women are demanding that they respect our reproductive rights. People of color are saying, hey, we want reparations for the wrongs that have been done against us. So we are fighting to end the racism, to end the misogyny, to end the homophobia that we have in our society. And we know that one of the ways that we can do that is by making sure, as I was mentioning before, that somehow we have art in every single school in our society, every single school, but that we also have civic education, ethics studies, women's studies, gender studies in every single classroom in our society. We know that children are not born racist or misogynists or homophobes. They become that way because of the culture that they grow up in or the beliefs of their parents. And probably all of us have members of our family that have that poison that somehow they have absorbed in our society, to have some of those isms in their lives. And I want to share with you two things I want to share with you, and I hope that you will take this back home to the Thanksgiving dinner table. And one of them is this. One good way that we can end racism is just to remember who we are. We are Homo sapiens, right? We have one human race. We have a lot of different cultures, a lot of different nationalities, but only one human race. And where did our human race begin? Somebody? Anybody? Africa. Absolutely. Our human race began in Africa. As our human race traveled across the planet, they went to the northern parts, or the colder parts, I should say that. People kind of lost their color. They got lighter in skin, lighter shades of hair, different color eyes, and so they kind of lost their color. Now, people have to go back to the beach or or the tanning salons to get their color back. And so, we can say to all of the white supremacists out there, you know what? We are all Africans. So get over it, okay? Just get over it. You're Africans. And that means that we are all related. We are all related. We are all, and we know had we as human beings not supported each other, we would not have survived on this planet because the larger animals would have had us for lunch. And so thinking of us being all related, I want you to take the hand of the person next to you turn to each other and say, hello, relative. And so we know that we have to also act together to be able to survive. And right now we have an attack on our democracy. We see what is happening in Ukraine. It's in the news every single day, where you have a despot and a dictator trying to take over another country and killing people just so they could have that power. Well, we have something like that happening in our society. We have people out there in our society that are trying to destroy our democracy. And they're doing that by dividing people with voter suppression, attacking LGBT community, especially transgender people, attacking again women's right to abortion. And this is all, they call it the cultural war. And then education, trying to prevent the real history of the United States taught in our schools. You know? So we cannot let that happen. And I think we have to equate on a different scale, of course, but we have to equate what is happening to us with these people that are dividing us. And why do they do this? Why do they keep us fighting each other? So that they can hold on to their power. So that they can hold on to their power. And I was just speaking on an earlier Zoom with the local library. They're trying to keep the books that would really give the true history of our society from being taught in schools, you know, and being in libraries. They want to keep us ignorant. They want to keep us ignorant. And I like to quote a great philosopher named Jose Ortega y Gasset, and this is what he said in a book called Revolution of the Masses. And he wrote this book, it's a small book, 100 pages, and this is what he said. If the people and the citizens of a country are not educated, then the greedy and the corrupt will govern. The greedy and the corrupt will govern. And this is where we are at in the United States of America right now, when you have 10%, this is kind of a mind blower, the 10% of the people that are in control of our government, these 10% have 90% of the wealth. Think about that. 10% of the families, wealthy families like Walmart, people, they control 90% of the wealth. So then when we say, why do we not have universal health care for everyone? Why do we not have a universal college education, university education for everyone? Why do we not have enough money to teach arts and to support artists in our country? Because these 10% of the people control all of the wealth. So how do we change this, okay? An easy way, but maybe it takes a lot of work and a lot of patience, that we've really got to get civically engaged. And a lot of people in our society think, oh, well, that's not for me. Let the politicians take care of that. No, we can't do that. All of us have got to be informed, and we've got to, we've got to engage. In the work that we did with United Farm Workers and the work that my foundation does today, this is what we do. We empower people, make them understand that they have got to be activists. They've got to get out there, they've got to register to vote, they've got to support progressive politicians that are going to fight for us. And when we think of all of us here in this room right now, the power that we have to make this happen, we know that this year we have elections coming up, and I hope that every single one of you will get out there and organize, become activists, and make sure that we can elect progressives to the different bodies, the legislative bodies, but also, by the way, the school boards. This is another very important element. So we have to take over the school boards. We've got to make sure that the people that we elect, put that as one of the agenda items. You've got to support artists. You've got to go out there. You've got to get money for our artists so that they will be able to keep our society sane and whole, okay? But it's not going to happen unless we do it. When Cesar Chavez and I started the Farm Workers Union, there was only 3 of us. It was Cesar, his wife Helen, and myself. And everybody said to us, you're not going to be able to do this, it's impossible. Well, we did it. But the only way that we could make it happen is we had to engage people to support us. And that's what I know that you are going to be able to do. You be in the vanguard, get out there, do the organizing, and you're going to be, and as I mentioned before, you're not just fighting for yourself, you are fighting especially for our young people and for our society as a whole. And I want to end with telling you a personal story about my son, Ricardo Chavez. My son Rick, he is an artist, and he got into trouble as a youngster, kind of hanging out with the wrong people. And so, but he went to Delancey Street. I don't know if you've heard about Delancey Street. By the way, Delancey Street is right here in San Francisco. If you want to go somewhere to get a good dinner or a good lunch, look it up. It's right there on the wharf in San Francisco. I'm sorry, we're in Sacramento, but if you go to San Francisco, go to Delancey Street. But in Delancey Street, what they do is they take people that have been in trouble and they rehabilitate them. And they have a very, very good record of rehabilitation. Well, my son Rick, he got in trouble, and he was accepted by Delancey Street, and he was assigned to work in New Mexico. And there he learned how to make pottery. He learned from the indigenous people there. He became a very, very good potter. He actually dug his own clay. He didn't use a wheel, and he made this beautiful, beautiful pottery. And when he left Delancey Street, then he got a job as a teacher at a charter school to teach the young people there how to do ceramics. And and he was just so thrilled at the young people, how they responded to that. And especially the young people that had problems. By having their fingers in the clay, and by what they were doing, and it just so calmed them, and it made them so proud of the work that they did, and he was just thrilled with what he was doing. Sadly, his program was displaced because they wanted more money for a football team. And he disbanded and stopped the program. And I know that if we could have ceramics class in every single school, what that would mean for the children, especially for those that are having issues. And every young person has issues, because they're growing up in this crazy world that they're growing up in, and this is something that they can heal. So I just really want to, again, invoke and ask all of you to get out there and make sure that we can have ceramic classes, that we can have art classes, drama classes, dancing classes, music lessons in every single school. There's a lot of you here today. There's a lot of you here today, and I know that you have many other people that are with us on the Zoom. So let's make that a mission. Let's make that a mission, and we're going to fight to make sure that we have more art and more ceramics in every single school. We can make it happen. Si se puede. So I'm going to end my talk. And again, I want to thank you very much for having me. This is just, as I said before, I feel very blessed that you've invited me to speak. I hope that in some way I was helpful to you. And someone mentioned that I should say something about Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy, just before he was assassinated, he had these words to say: we have responsibilities and obligations to our fellow citizens. So if we can think of making art a part of every family, of every community, of every governance, every government that we have, that we can say that this is part of our mission and part of our goal. So I would like to ask you all to stand up for a second, okay? And I'm going to ask you all a question, and I think you know the answer. And we have to think of, again, as activists, how are we going to change this world? How are we going to change the society and make it better for everyone? And we know that we are the only ones that can make it happen. We can't wait for anybody else to come and do it for us. So the question I'm going to ask you, and I know you know the answer, I'm going to ask you the question, I'm going to say, who's got the power, okay? And I want you to answer, we've got the power. And I'm going to say, what kind of power? And you can say, people power, all right? Remember, we've got the power to make it happen. And then I'm going to end with the words, sí se puede, which means yes, we can. Sí se puede, yes, we can. Okay? Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Who's got the power? We got the power. Okay, some people are not quite sure. So let's do that one more time, but let's do it at the top of our lungs, like we really not only believe it, but we're going to use it, okay? Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. So are we going to go out there? Are we going to fight to make sure that we can have the ceramic arts, the healing arts, for the soul of our country, in every single family, in every single community? What do we say? ¿Se puede? Or again, ¿se puede? Bueno, let's use it. Let's do that. Sí se puede everywhere. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.